Okay, before we start making our rockets, you want to unplug or unwrap your hot glue gun. Make sure you have a glue stick in it. And you're going to plug this in. It takes about 5 minutes for this to heat up. Now this end right here gets very hot, so you don't want to touch this end with your fingers. You use the trigger here, the little blue trigger, to push the hot glue forward. When this glue stick gets into here, then you take a new glue stick and you stick it in the end and you can keep gluing, okay? So plug this in, set it aside, and then we'll start the rocket instructions. Okay, here are your instructions for making your rocket. I'm going to be basically following the instructions in this book. So if you'd rather go through the book and make your rocket, that's fine. Otherwise, you can watch this video. So I'm going to take a bunch of stuff out of here. All right, this is what we need to start with. They call this plastic tube thing that you're going to make your airframe with. Now, the plastic tube is not going to end up being part of your rocket. Okay, this is just to help you make the rocket, but you'll take this out after we do this a couple steps here. So first thing you're going to do is glue this piece of white paper to itself. So we use this plastic tube to help us make it into a circle like this, a cylinder. This is good. The first step towards making the airframe. It takes a little bit of work to kind of get it wrapped around there and kind of trained into a cylinder. So you spend a little time here, it'll pay off later. Okay, so now I know I've got it because it's pretty tight on the tube. There are not a lot of gaps or creases and bends and stuff. Okay, now to get this to set into place, you get your glue out. It's helpful to have a partner at this point. You open up your glue and you put a little line, or it's called a bead of glue, just where this paper overlaps onto this one. You don't want to get glue onto the plastic tube if you can, because you don't want this sticking to the tube. We have to slide this out later. So I'll put a little glue along here, and I can use my finger to kind of smear it along, trying not to get onto the plastic tube. And then here's the part that's tricky. Okay. I think I got that pretty good. Not bad anyway. Alright, so now I've got the paper around the plastic tube, and the plastic tube still moves, so that's a good sign. Alright, now the second part is I'm going to use this red paper. But first of all, I have to get out my ruler and my scissors, because it says cut off an 11-inch piece of this 3-inch wide tape. So I'm going to mark here 11 inches. 11 inches, and that's where I cut it. And then it says to get your sponge wet, so I'm going to go over to the sink, put some water on the sponge, and squeeze it out. So it's damp, it's not dripping wet, it's just damp. And I'm going to rub the damp sponge up and down this 11-inch piece of paper. And then I'm going to wrap it around the white paper, like this. You can like roll it right onto itself. Now don't worry, it's not supposed to go all the way around, so you'll have a strip of white paper there. And again, you don't want it glued to the plastic tube, so it can move a little bit. That's good. All right, now the third step is to take this remaining 18 inches of red paper and cut one end at a 45-degree angle. So if this is 3 inches wide, which it is, then we're going to go 3 inches down the side, and then we can draw a line here and a diagonal, and that's a 45-degree angle. So then we can trim that off. All right, now it says you're going to wrap this around at an angle, but before you get it wet, you need to practice to make sure you're going to do it the right way. So here's how it looks like. You put this pointy end up at the top, like this. So when you wrap it around, it makes a nice straight edge here. And fold it back there, good. And then when you keep wrapping, it goes all the way down like this. And at the end, you're gonna end up with this little weird thing here, but don't worry about that. We'll finish that off later. So it looks like I know what I'm gonna do here. So now, remember how I have it. I'm gonna have it like this. I'm gonna turn it over, and I'm gonna get it wet with the gummed paper. Excuse me, with the sponge. I'm gonna get the gummed paper wet. Turn it back around, and I'm going to start wrapping like so. And keep pressing it down as I wrap it along. I want to have it nice and snug. Now if this doesn't stick, you got to add a little extra moisture to it. Ooh, that looks good. And I can still move my plastic tube in and out, so that's a good sign. Okay. Now, the next thing I ask you to do is to trim the ends of the airframe with scissors. So, I'm going to take this off. I'm going to trim off this extra stuff here. That's pretty good. That end's pretty good, so we're good there. And now it tells me to take the tube and draw a straight line along the length of the red part. Yeah, that looks good. I have to do half of it. All right, now I'm going to locate a launch lug. That's this little thing. Now, we're going to glue this onto here. Okay, so we made our line here. Now we're going to measure 3 inches up from the bottom and make a little mark. And that is where we're going to put our launch lug, between here and the end of the launch lug. So that's where we're going to need to apply glue. So let me zoom in here a little bit. So what you're going to do is put glue between those two marks and stick your launch lug on there. So hopefully your hot glue gun is ready now. It's been heating all this time. So I'm going to put a bead of hot glue right down that line. Ooh, don't let that roll over like that. And I'm going to stick my straw carefully. Don't try not to touch the hot glue. It might burn you. You want that lined up straight with that line that you put on the rocket. That is important. Nice straight line there. Okay, so if you've got that looking like that, you're in good shape. Now this hot glue dries very quickly. It only take a minute for it to harden up. So we're in pretty good shape. We're going to set this aside. Try not to let it roll over to where it knocks the launch lug off. And we're going to go on to the next step, which is making the fins. There should be a piece of kind of white cardboard looking stuff in here. And then there should be a piece like this. So this is the rocket fin pattern. You're going to cut that out carefully, right along the black line.
Don't worry about trying to cut that notch out. And then we'll cut this part here. And then here. And then this one.
Okay, so now we have our pattern. So I'm going to stick this pattern up in the corner of my piece of cardboard. And I'm going to trace the outside edges. This and like this. Now, if you look closely, this thing is a little bit narrow. The paper's a little bit narrower than the cardboard. But don't worry about trying to draw that line. We're just going to go all the way off to the edge like that. Okay? Now, we're going to do it again, and this one is going to be like this. And we'll draw across here. And this is a weird one. It's kind of going to go at an angle. And then match up with the other one. Okay, now for the third one, I have to turn it upside down in order for it to fit on here. But then I can use that same line I used before and then just draw this line and then this line. So I end up with something that looks like that. These are my three fins, 1, 2, and 3. You don't have to write the numbers on them. Okay, so now I'm going to cut these out with my scissors.
So I'm going to cut here. Oh, it's kind of hard to cut. So you need help, let me know. I cut across here. I'm going to cut this line. And then I'm going to cut, this one's a little tricky. I'm going to cut this line first. And then cut off the top part. So I got 2 fins ready to go. Now this one, I'm going to cut this little angled line here. And then cut this one. And now, I have my 2 fins.
Ready to go. Now, how am I going to put them on the rocket? So, on your, in your booklet, this is the part where you're going to need to use your booklet. You've got on page 8 a guide for where to put the 3 fins. So, you put your airframe with the launch lug line at the bottom, and you make sure this line that you've got goes between 2 of those fin lines. You don't want it lined up in the same spot. It won't work out. You'll see later. So now with that on there like that, you can take your marker and mark where those 3 lines, and then I do the one on the back, which you can't see, where they hit the tube. So I've got 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. Now I can get my plastic tube again, and like we did before, make straight lines across here at those 3 marks.
Fourth grade movies in the radio, 4th grade movies.
Good, now I know where to put my fins. So now the only question is, how do you put it on? Okay, there looks like to be some choices here. So you want to put it on so that it ends up looking like this at the bottom, with that flat piece down, so you can rest on all three of them and stand up on its own. Okay? So I'm going to do one first, and I'll do the other three. Now I got my hot glue ready to go. Now I can mark on here how far I need to glue. I did that pretty close. I'm going to mark the top of that line so I know how far to put the glue. I'll do that all three of them while I'm here. I did that one almost just right. And then this one needs to be a little higher.
At 150.
Okay. So go back to the first one. Get my hot glue ready. And put a bead of glue in here. You want to work fast because the hot glue hardens pretty quickly and then it loses its stickiness. So the sooner you can put it on, the stickier it will be.
Big movies, you have Vivian Amoya, she's going home early.
And the better the bond will be. So if you lay your hot glue down there and then turn and talk to your friend for a few minutes, you'll come back and it may look like it's stuck, but it really won't be stuck very well at all because it cooled off so much.
Movies, did you copy that?
So that looks pretty good. Yeah. So I'm going to wait a minute here. I don't want to mess around with it until it is dried, so you want to put something on either side of your rocket to keep that from falling over for a minute while the glue hardens. All right, so I waited a minute. This one's on here pretty firm, so now I'll do my second one.
Gonna put my bead of glue down the line. Like that. Get my fin on here so it's going to be sitting flat on the ground like the other one, and then put it on there nice and straight. So you kind of want to look down the rocket. Oh, I see a bend here, that's not good. You want to look down the rocket, you don't want it like this or like this. You want it nice and straight at the edge of the rocket. That looks good. So again, I'll wait a minute for that one to harden.
Okay, so the second fin glue is hardened, so now I'm going to do the third one.
Same way, I'm going to glue it on here. Again, making sure I've got it lined up the same way as the other two. Stick it on there pretty quickly before the glue is dried or cooled. And then line it up straight, make sure it's perpendicular to the body of the rocket. That looks pretty good. Alright, I'm going to let this one sit for a minute to dry.
Alright, so all three of my fins have dried now, so I should be able to stand my rocket up like this. Have it be pretty level. I've got my launch lug glued on here, so we're ready for the next step. So the next step is to make the shock cord. So first of all, we're going to cut out the shock cord anchor program pattern.
And the sheet of paper you used before. Just cut along the solid black lines. Like so.
And then we'll fold at the dotted line and unfold, fold at the dotted line and unfold. All right, then we get our piece of elastic here. It's a white piece. It kind of looks like a piece of string. Don't confuse it with the other pieces of string that are in your box. This one is an elastic, stretchy piece. Okay? So we'll take one end of it and we will lie it down onto the paper like this. And then we'll take our regular Elmer's glue and we'll put some glue around it here. Or you can put the glue down like that and then stick it in there. that. And now you're going to fold this end over, kind of squish it in there good. And now you can add more glue on top of here. So when you fold it again, it's good and glued together, good and squishy. Now, we're going to set that end aside, and we'll take this end, and now you have to find what's called the screw eye in your box. It's a tiny little metal screw with an eye at the end. If you can see that, I'll have to zoom in on that. Okay, and you're going to tie this shock cord, this elastic cord, around through that eye of that screw. So you're going to do a double knot. So we'll do one knot, that, and then do it again, double knot. Okay, so we have our elastic with the shock cord pattern at one end and the screw eye at the other end. So it should look like this. All right. All right, so the next part we're going to make is the parachute. So we'll set this aside, get the parachute out, and cut along the dotted line.
These are not very sharp. Try these. That's better. Right there. And here. And keep going all the way around. Parachute.
Okay, now we got that done. You can use the point of your scissors to make a little hole. You get a hole there in that little bullseye on all 6 holes. Okay, last one. And then to did I get that one? Yeah. To reinforce it, you take these little reinforcement tabs that are in your kit, peel them off and put them over the big red circle.
Leaving the hole in the little red circle available for tying the string to.
Okay, so now we got reinforcements on all 6 corners of the parachute. So now you get your string out of here. These are officially called Shroud Lines. Should be 6 of them. And now you double knot each of these strings through these holes here. It would help if that hole was a little bigger. I'd have to get the string wet at the end and thread it through. Okay, here we go. And then double knot it. There's one. Oops. Knot, and here's a double knot. Okay, good. So I got one string done. So I'm going to do this 6 more times. So you can pause the video and start it when you are done with all 6 strings. Okay, so now you should have all 6 strings on your parachute. So we'll just set this aside for later. And now we got to get out these parts. All right, so this is the engine tube, and this is the engine lock, and these are the spacer rings. So the first thing we're going to do is get our pen and our ruler, and we'll make a mark about 1/4 of an inch down from the end, and then make another mark at 1 1/4 inches down. So 1/4 inch from the top, and then 1 1/4 from the top. Okay, so those are our two marks. Now, before we glue these spacer rings on here, we're going to want to have this engine lock in place on here. So remember, this is going to get glued into place underneath these spacer rings. So first of all, before we do that, we're going to get some glue, and we're going to start with this upper ring and put some glue on there and kind of smear it around a little bit with your finger. And then put some glue on the inside of this spacer ring. Smear it around a little bit. Good and goopy. Then we're going to lay this engine lock, the metal piece, over and press it right up against the end. Then we're going to slide this one on top. This is sometimes a little tricky. Oh, that was a tough one. And we're going to want that metal part all the way down, and then the spacer down. So you end up with the metal part against the top, then you got your spacer ring, and then we're going to put the other one on there, and this metal part sticks out of the end. Okay? Oops. So it looks like this. When you're done with the first part. Okay, now to put our second one on, we some glue here
On this area. And smear it around again. And smear some glue on the inside of the ring. You can be sloppy in this part, doesn't matter. You can't put too much glue on there. Then you slide this over the other end.
So you end up with something that looks like that. Doesn't look like that, let me know. Okay? That's the engine mount assembly. Alright, so now we're going to put it all together. So now we're going to glue our shot cord into the airframe. So we're going to kind of bend this around our finger to kind of give it a curved shape, kind of like the inside of the airframe is. And then we're going to put a bunch of glue on here. You don't have to be shy. Smear it all around. And then we're going to glue it to the inside here, a couple inches down. It's just basically as far down as you can reach with your finger. Kind of press it up against the inside of the tube. That's good. I'll let that dry there, and then we're going to attach a parachute to the eye screw. So we're going to take all 6 of our lines of string and get all the ends together. So they're kind of, try to get them all even. This is a tricky part. So we'll get
These two together, and then this one, and here's number 3, and then number 4, and let's see, 5 and 6, right here.
All right, so now we kind of twist them. Might help to put a little glue on the end to help them stick together. We twist them because we have to make them go through that eye screw, all 6 of them. All right, got it. Oop, oop. One got stuck, pulled ahead. Which one is that? There it is. So now I got all 6 in here. And now I just want to tie them to the eye screw with a single knot. Uh-oh, I lost one of them. There we go. This is the tricky part. See if I can tie those all together. Oh, yes. Phew. All right, so now I've got my parachute tied onto the eye screw. You know what? I'm gonna add a second knot here. I'm not happy with that first knot, so I'm gonna double knot it. Oh, that feels better. Yeah, I think that single knot might have come loose. Okay. Good. All right, so that part is set. Now, I'm going to attach this eye screw to the nose cones. Now we get our yellow nose cone out, and there's a little hole down in there that this eye screw gets screwed into. So you put it in there and twist the nose cone until you feel it start to catch, and keep twisting it until it stops. That means it's in there tight. Good, so now we have the airframe attached to the nose cone as well as the parachute. Good. Now we're gonna set that part aside, and we go to the other end of the rocket. Now we have to put our engine mount inside the rocket. And the trick is to make sure this metal part that's sticking over the edge, make sure that goes in last. So the other end goes in first, like this, and you're going to end up having it end up about like that, with a little bit of the brown tube sticking out of the end of the rocket, like that. So now we know it fits. Now I'm going to put a lot of glue around the outside of these 2 spacer rings. And you can be very generous with the glue here. Won't hurt it to have a lot of glue on there. Better to have more than not enough. You can smear that around a little bit with your fingers. Okay, then we put it in like that, and then stop right about there, so that a little bit of the tube is still sticking out at the end there. Okay, so that looks good. Now we're going to set this aside to dry for 20 or 30 minutes, because that part needs to be good and dry in there before we launch anything. Okay, so now this is dried up a little bit. So now we're going to take this piece of tissue, yours is probably a different color from your kit, and crumple it up and put it, make sure that part's dry in there. Don't want it sticking. So we're going to put it down into the top of the airframe. Just as far down as you can comfortably push it with your finger. It's just going to protect the parachute from burning when the engine shoots this hot blast of fire out the top of the rocket to eject the parachute. So we're going to kind of fold up your parachute like this, and then start rolling it up. Nice and tight. And then wrap the strings around it like that. And then you're going to put the shock cord and the parachute down into the top of the rocket, if you can. Like that. Shove it all in there. And then you put the nose cone on the very top. Hopefully you'll have an easier time than me. Phew. Okay, got it all in there. All right, so now the next step is to spray paint our rockets. So when you get to this step, come see me and I'll teach you how to spray paint your rocket. And then when it's dried, then I'll show you how to put an engine and an igniter in the bottom of the rocket, and then it'll be ready to launch.